What if the reason nothing ever truly changes for you is not because people are cruel, unlucky, or unfair, but because you've been leaving the doors open? Think about it. Every insult that lingered, every betrayal that cut deeper than it should have, every silence that ruined your day, none of it forced its way in. It was invited. You handed over access. You revealed what mattered. You reacted. And in doing so, you unknowingly taught the world exactly how to reach you. This is not an attack. It's a revelation. Because the moment you see this clearly, something irreversible begins to happen. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance and start seeing yourself as the architect of your inner state. That is where real power begins. Most people are raised on a seductive lie. That feeling deeply is strength. That openness is virtue. That emotional transparency makes you human and therefore noble. It sounds beautiful. It feels moral. But it is also incomplete. Because in a world driven not by ideals, but by incentives, raw emotion without control becomes exposure. And exposure is weakness. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He didn't write for saints or dreamers. He wrote for people who wanted to survive reality as it is, not as it should be. He understood that the world doesn't reward those who feel the most. It rewards those who manage feeling the best. The ones who rise, who remain untouched by chaos, who walk calmly through storms, are not the most emotional. They are the most composed. Here is the first principle you must absorb fully. Whoever controls your emotions controls you. If someone can alter your inner state with a word, a delay, or a look, then your peace does not belong to you. It belongs to them. You may think you're free, but you're operating under invisible strings. Ask yourself honestly, why do people provoke you? Because they know you'll react. Why does silence hurt you? Because you're waiting for validation. Why do certain individuals keep disrespecting you? Because nothing in your response makes it costly. Emotional reactions are signals, and the world is always watching for signals. This isn't personal. It's strategic. Imagine your mind as a fortress. Most people leave the gates wide open, lights on, guards asleep. Then they're shocked when invaders walk in unchallenged. Emotional discipline is not about turning cold or becoming numb. It's about building walls where walls are needed. It's about deciding who gets access and who never will. Detachment is often misunderstood. People hear the word and think it means apathy or bitterness. It doesn't. True detachment is not the absence of feeling. It is the refusal to be ruled by feeling. You still feel anger, disappointment, desire, but they no longer decide your next move. You do. Think of a chess player. He doesn't panic when a piece is taken. He doesn't celebrate prematurely when he gains ground. He observes, he calculates, he waits. While others are emotionally reacting to each move, he is already 3 steps ahead. Emotion is happening, but strategy is in control. This is what Machiavelli meant when he implied that those who feel too much fall too fast. Emotion without governance turns you into a puppet. You become predictable, and predictability is a liability. The moment people know how you react, they know how to manipulate you. So let's reframe this with clarity. Becoming untouchable does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop depending. You stop outsourcing your peace. You stop allowing your sense of worth to rise and fall based on how others treat you on a given day. Picture this. Someone insults you and nothing shifts inside. No spike of anger. No urge to defend. No internal collapse. Just awareness. Or someone withdraws affection. and your life continues unaffected. Or someone betrays you, and instead of breaking, you reposition. You don't implode. You adapt. When emotion is no longer their weapon, their power disappears. This is where the balance matters. You don't rage. You don't argue. You don't over-explain. You pause. You observe. You allow silence to do what emotion used to. Silence is not empty. It is pressure. It forces the other side to reveal themselves while you remain unreadable. Indifference, when intentional, is destabilizing. Not loud indifference. Not performative. Quiet indifference. The kind that says, without words, "You don't have the authority to disturb my inner state." Think of a mountain in a storm. The wind screams, the rain lashes, but the mountain does not respond. It doesn't fight the weather. It simply remains. And eventually, the storm exhausts itself. This is the mindset shift you are making now. You are not here to eliminate emotion. You are here to master it. To feel fully, but act selectively. To understand that not everyone deserves your warmth, your fire, or your explanation. Because the more emotion you waste on the wrong people and situations, the less you have available when something truly matters. Emotion is energy, and energy, when misallocated, becomes depletion. So from this moment forward, you begin a new practice. When tension appears, you pause. When provoked, you delay. When tempted to react, you observe instead. You treat every emotional trigger not as a command, but as information. And slowly, something changes. Your reactions slow. Your presence becomes heavier. People sense that they can no longer move you easily, and that is when the balance of power shifts, without you ever raising your voice. This is the first step toward becoming untouchable, not by hardening your heart, but by fortifying your mind. Not by withdrawing from the world, but by entering it armored. Because once you stop bleeding emotionally in public, the world loses its leverage over you. Once you understand emotional discipline, a deeper layer of power reveals itself. One most people never even realize exists. It's not just about what you feel. It's about who controls the invisible frame of every interaction you step into. There is a silent war happening around you every day, not of fists or weapons, but of perception. A war over who defines reality in the room. And the one who wins this war is rarely the loudest, the angriest, or even the most intelligent. It is the one who controls the frame. A frame is the unseen lens through which people interpret what's happening. It decides who leads and who follows, who is questioned and who is assumed, who explains and who is listened to. Most people walk into rooms already defeated because they unconsciously accept whatever frame is already there. Someone speaks with confidence and they shrink. Someone challenges them and they defend. Someone disrespects them and they justify. Each reaction feels natural, reasonable, even mature. But every reaction hands away control. Machiavelli despised this weakness, not because he lacked compassion, but because he understood the cost of surrendering initiative. A strategist never lets the enemy choose the battlefield. He shapes the environment before the fight even begins. Here is the uncomfortable truth. If you don't define how others perceive you, they will define you for their own benefit. And once that perception hardens, escaping it requires 10 times the effort. Watch people in positions of real power, not the noisy ones, the effective ones. They don't rush to speak. They don't explain themselves on demand. They don't defend every challenge. They let silence hang just long enough to make others uneasy. That unease is not accidental. It's leverage. When you answer immediately, you signal eagerness. When you explain too much, you signal insecurity. When you rush to correct misunderstanding, you signal dependence on approval. None of this is malicious, but all of it is costly. Frame control begins before a single word leaves your mouth. It lives in posture, in stillness, in eye contact, in the calm assumption that you belong exactly where you are. Not because someone invited you, but because you decided you do. This is not arrogance. Arrogance needs validation. Frame control does not. Imagine two men walking into the same room. One scans faces, adjusts himself, adapts to the mood. The other moves slowly, grounded, letting the room adjust to him. Nothing aggressive, nothing forced. But the energy is different. The first man is asking silently, "How should I be here?" The second man is stating without words, "This is how I am." People respond instinctively to this. They don't know why, but they feel it. Most people are desperate to be understood, liked, validated. That desperation makes them transparent, predictable, manipulable. The moment you no longer seek emotional confirmation from others, something dangerous happens. You become unreadable, and unreadable people unsettle others. When someone challenges you and you rush to prove yourself, you accept their frame. You acknowledge that they have the authority to judge you. But when you pause, when you tilt your head slightly, when you respond slowly, deliberately, without urgency, you invert the hierarchy. That pause is not empty. It is a statement. Your challenge does not automatically deserve my energy. Silence, used correctly, is not avoidance. It is dominance through restraint. Think of a still lake. Someone throws a stone, expecting ripples, but the surface barely moves. The lack of reaction confuses them, and confusion erodes confidence. This is why the Machiavellian mind wins by refusing to acknowledge certain games as worth playing. You don't need to win every argument. You only need to decide which arguments never mattered. Frame is not just in words. It's in implication. When you speak as though respect is assumed, people often comply without knowing why. When you move as though validation is irrelevant, disapproval loses its sting. Every time you chase approval, you hand someone else the pen to write your identity. Every time you defend unnecessarily, you reveal where you still doubt yourself. And every time you react emotionally, you show exactly where the pressure points are. But when you stop explaining, something shifts. The burden moves. Others begin filling the silence. They talk more, reveal more, expose themselves while you remain intact. This is where power quietly accumulates. You are no longer trying to be impressive. You are no longer trying to be understood. You are shaping the atmosphere instead. Setting the tempo, lowering the emotional temperature simply by refusing to escalate. Machiavelli knew that power is often expressed not through action, but through refusal. The wolf does not bark to announce itself. It watches. It waits. It owns space by not needing to claim it. And here is the paradox. The less you seek control overtly, the more control you gain implicitly. When you stop reacting, people don't think you're weak. They wonder what you're thinking. When you don't justify yourself, they assume you don't need to. When you don't rush, they assume you have options. That assumption becomes your shield. So understand this clearly. Frame control is not manipulation. It is self-governance projected outward. It is the natural consequence of someone who no longer allows others to dictate their internal state. And once you master this, you'll notice something profound. Rooms feel different when you enter. Conversations slow. People listen more carefully when you speak because you don't speak often. You are no longer reacting to the world. You are setting the terms under which it engages you. And that is the second step toward becoming untouchable. Once you control your emotions and the frame, the next layer of power emerges quietly. But this one changes everything. It is the mastery of silence. Most people talk themselves into weakness. They reveal too much, too soon, to the wrong audience. They speak to relieve tension, not to shape outcomes. And every word they release becomes a map of their inner world, their fears, their desires, their limits. Machiavelli understood something brutal and timeless. The moment you are fully known, you are no longer dangerous. Silence is not the absence of power. It is the preservation of it. Look around. People overshare constantly. They confess their struggles, justify their decisions, explain their motives, narrate their pain. They believe openness will bring understanding. But the world is not a therapist. The world is a battlefield of incentives, and information, once released, is never neutral. Every unnecessary word is leverage handed away. This is why the most strategic individuals speak less, not because they have nothing to say, but because their words are expensive. Each one is chosen. Each one lands with intent. When they speak, the room leans in. Because silence has created gravity. Silence unsettles people for a simple reason. It forces them to project. When you don't reveal yourself, others fill the gaps with their own assumptions. And in doing so, they expose themselves, their insecurities, their expectations, their hidden agendas. You remain the mirror. They become the subject. This is not passivity. This is deliberate restraint. Think of a poker table. The weakest player is the one who reacts to every hand, every loss, every bluff. The strongest player gives nothing away. No facial shift, no emotional leak, just stillness. And that stillness drives others to overplay. Silence works the same way in life. When someone provokes you and you respond immediately, you reward the provocation. When you argue, you validate the attack. When you explain, you concede relevance. But when you say nothing, when you let the moment stretch, you deny them the feedback they need to continue. Their energy collapses inward. People who rely on manipulation need reaction. They feed on emotional output. Take that away, and they lose balance. Their confidence erodes. They speak more, push harder, reveal desperation. All while you remain centered. There is a reason men who speak less are often perceived as more intelligent, more powerful, even more dangerous. Silence invites speculation, and speculation is more powerful than certainty. A man who reveals nothing becomes a canvas. Others paint him with their fears or fantasies, and whatever they imagine, they treat as real. Machiavelli would have called this ruling without a crown. You don't need authority to command attention. You don't need titles to influence outcomes. Presence does the work, and presence is built by restraint. Now understand this clearly. Strategic silence is not avoidance. It is timing. You speak when it shifts power. You stay quiet when speech would weaken your position. You are not mute, you are selective. Every interaction becomes a calculation, not an impulse. Unpredictability is born here. When people can't read you, they can't plan around you. When they can't predict your reaction, they hesitate. And hesitation is dominance. Predictability, on the other hand, is a trap. Once people know how you'll respond, they begin designing situations to exploit that response. They press buttons deliberately. They bait reactions. They steer outcomes. Silence breaks that loop. Imagine conflict. One person escalates, raises their voice, demands engagement. The other stays calm, says little, watches closely. Who controls the exchange? Not the loud one, the composed one. Rage burns fast. Stillness endures. This is why Machiavellian power does not rush to win arguments. It refuses to legitimize them. It shapes the situation so thoroughly that resistance feels pointless. And here is the deeper truth. Silence also protects your inner world. Every explanation drains energy. Every defense costs focus. When you stop reacting to every minor offense, you conserve something rare: clarity. Clarity allows you to see patterns instead of moments, intent instead of noise, long-term position instead of short-term emotion. This is how you stop being dragged into chaos and start watching it from above. The less you reveal, the more control you gain. Not over others, but over yourself. And that self-mastery radiates outward. People begin to speak differently around you. They choose words more carefully. They hesitate before crossing lines, not because you threaten them, but because your silence carries weight. You are no longer transparent. You are no longer accessible by default. And access, once limited, becomes valuable. But understand this: silence will feel uncomfortable at first. You are trained to fill gaps, to soothe tension, to explain yourself, to prove you're not a threat. Let that instinct die. That discomfort is the sound of an old identity losing relevance. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to be unmovable. You are not here to react. You are here to observe, choose, and act when it serves you. This is the third step toward becoming untouchable. Not louder, not colder, but quieter, and therefore far more powerful. Once silence becomes natural, something deeper begins to form beneath it. This is where most people stop following, because this step is not about tactics. It's about identity. It's the construction of the inner fortress. Up to this point, you've learned how to stop reacting, how to control the frame, how to withhold information. But none of that holds if your center is still porous, if your worth is still negotiated externally, if approval, attention, or validation can still slip through the cracks and shake you. Machiavelli warned about external enemies, but the wise understood his deeper implication. The greatest vulnerability is internal. A city does not fall because the enemy is strong. It falls because the gates are weak. Your mind is no different. Most people live with no inner walls. Every opinion enters, every insult echoes, every rejection settles inside and rearranges their sense of self. They are not living, they are being occupied, colonized emotionally by the moods, judgments, and expectations of others. This is why you've been hurt before. Not because you were fragile, but because you were open in places that required reinforcement. The fortress within is not built by shutting the world out. It's built by deciding, with precision, what is allowed to pass through. It is a state where your worth is internally generated, not externally borrowed. Ask yourself this: when someone withdraws approval from you, what collapses? When someone criticizes you, what shakes? Whatever answer comes up, that is where the wall is thin. Most men believe strength is about endurance, about how much pain they can absorb and keep moving. But that is not strength. That is tolerance. True inner power is not about what you can endure. It's about what you refuse to absorb in the first place. People test you constantly, with comments, with silence, with chaos. They want to see if they can shift you, if they can tilt your internal balance even slightly, and the moment they succeed, they mark that spot. They remember it. They return to it. But when nothing moves inside you, when their behavior no longer rearranges your inner world. The test ends permanently. This does not mean you feel nothing. It means feeling no longer governs you. Pain still registers. Disappointment still exists. Loss still happens. But it does not penetrate your identity. It does not rewrite who you are. It does not drag you into self-doubt or emotional bargaining. You experience emotion the way a general receives battlefield reports, with awareness, not panic. This is the shift. The fortress within is built through solitude, reflection, and discipline. Not isolation, but deliberate separation from noise. You stop broadcasting your struggles. You stop seeking saviors. You stop explaining your boundaries. From this point on, your life becomes sovereign territory. Disrespect no longer triggers confrontation, it triggers removal. You don't argue, you reposition. You don't prove your worth, you embody it. You don't beg for understanding, you enforce standards. And here is the key distinction. Enforcement is quiet. Machiavelli understood that order is maintained not by constant punishment, but by certainty of consequence. When people know where the line is, and that it will not move, they stop testing it. But certainty only exists when your inner world is solid. When you do not hesitate internally before acting externally. When you are aligned. Alignment is power. This is not arrogance. Arrogance still needs an audience. This is clarity. You know what you stand for. You know what you accept. You know what you walk away from. And when the moment comes, there is no inner debate. That decisiveness is felt before it is spoken. Think of a man who cannot be flattered, cannot be shamed, cannot be rushed. He moves through betrayal not as a victim, but as a strategist adjusting position. He cuts ties without emotional debris. He continues forward without explanation. That man cannot be manipulated, because manipulation requires access. And access has been revoked. The fortress within is not coldness, it is coherence. Your thoughts, values, and actions are aligned. There is no internal civil war, no part of you seeking approval while another seeks dominance. You are whole, and wholeness is threatening. This is why people will accuse you of changing, of becoming distant, of being different. They are not wrong. You have changed. But what they are reacting to is not cruelty. It is the loss of influence. They can no longer move you. At first, this will feel lonely. The silence where validation used to live will echo. You will feel the withdrawal, the discomfort of no longer being needed, praised, or relied upon. Let it happen. That is not loneliness. That is detox. You are shedding the version of yourself that was useful to others but expensive to you. The obedient version. The explainable version. The emotionally accessible version. Machiavelli would tell you this pain is the price of sovereignty. A fortress is not built in a day. Stone by stone, you reinforce boundaries. Thought by thought, you remove dependency. Reaction by reaction, you replace impulse with intention. And one day, you notice something quietly extraordinary. People no longer try to provoke you. They no longer disrespect you casually. They no longer assume access. Not because you announced anything, but because your presence now carries weight. They feel that nothing inside you is loose. Nothing is negotiable. Nothing is easily touched. This is the fourth transformation. And now, there is only one step left. Now everything converges. This is where the lesson stops being theory and becomes a state of being. Because once the fortress is built, once silence is natural and the frame is yours, a final truth emerges, one that permanently alters how you move through the world. You realize that true power was never about controlling others. It was always about sovereignty over yourself. Look back honestly at the moments that broke you, the times you begged to be understood, the times you explained yourself into exhaustion, the times you chased closure, validation, reassurance, hoping that if someone finally saw your worth, the pain would stop. What you were really doing was outsourcing your peace. Every time you needed someone else to confirm your value, you handed them a weapon. Every time their approval lifted you or their silence crushed you, you placed your inner state in their hands. And unconsciously, you taught them that they could move you. That era is over. Machiavelli never promised safety. He promised clarity. And clarity begins with a brutal realization. The world will never consistently protect your peace. Even love comes with conditions. Even loyalty shifts. Even kindness has limits. Waiting for the outside world to be fair is the slowest form of self-destruction. So, you stop waiting. You stop needing. You stop asking. Instead, you generate your own gravity. The fortress within is now active. Your worth is no longer reactive. Your peace is no longer borrowed. Praise doesn't inflate you. Rejection doesn't collapse you. You are no longer starved for attention. So attention loses its power over you. And this is where you become untouchable. Not because nothing ever happens to you, but because nothing rearranges you. Betrayal becomes information, not trauma. Disrespect becomes a filter, not a wound. Loss becomes a recalibration, not an identity. You don't collapse, you adjust. You don't react, you reposition. This is what emotional sovereignty looks like. Most men exhaust themselves trying to endure pain. The sovereign man eliminates unnecessary pain at the source. He does not absorb what was never meant to be carried. He does not internalize what was never about him. People will still test you. They will still provoke. They will still withdraw, criticize, and attempt to regain influence. But something is different now. Nothing sticks. You have become still on the inside, and stillness is terrifying to those who rely on chaos. You no longer broadcast your struggles. You no longer recruit sympathy. You no longer explain your evolution. Your boundaries are not arguments. They are facts. Enforced quietly, consistently, without emotional leakage. Your life becomes sovereign territory. Access is earned. Presence is intentional. Energy is conserved. You no longer respond to disrespect. You remove proximity. You no longer prove worth. You embody it. You no longer chase clarity. You operate from certainty. And here is the final awakening. Silence was never emptiness. Detachment was never coldness. Distance was never fear. They were refinement. You have stepped out of the role of the emotionally available man and into the role of the self-commanding one. You are no longer shaped by moods, opinions, or reactions. You shape yourself. Machiavelli would tell you this is the highest form of power, not domination, but inviolability. Because when nothing outside of you can disturb what's inside, manipulation fails. Control collapses. The games end. People sense it immediately. They don't know why they can't read you. They don't know why provoking you no longer works. They don't know why your presence feels heavier now, but they feel it. You have become the storm behind the silence, the weight behind the pause, the fortress that does not announce itself. You are no longer here to be liked. You are no longer here to be understood. You are here to command yourself, and through that, command your fate. Let them watch. Let them wonder. Let them try and fail to move you. Because from this moment forward, nothing and nobody affects you unless you allow it, and you don't.